Hey, good morning. My name's Gary Uterberg. I have a presentation that I'm delivering called What is the Value of a Strike? Dated this presentation for January 20th, 2025. I recently was on a picket line for the Park City Ski Patrol, and I want to be able to share some information that I learned from that experience because I think that it's valuable for people that are both in organized labor and not in organized labor. We're in a unique position in American history where organized labor has a lot of very positive views. We're at about 70% approval rating. And we're in a position where people are aware of the challenges that workers are facing. And so there's an issue where, in a lot of ways, workers aren't being paid what they're worth. They're not being paid what their contribution is. And so I want to be able to talk about experience being on a picket line, being able to talk to striking workers, and to be able to share this information. This entire presentation is just my personal point of view. This is something that does not represent the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, does not represent Millwright Local 548. This is solely my own opinion. It's something that speaks for what I think, what I see, and what I experience, having been on a picket line recently, having been experienced being able to participate in labor actions and being able to see the results of this. Just as background, I'm on the executive board and I'm a trustee with Millwright Local 548. I'm an apprentice millwright with that local. I've been in for about 3.5 years. And it's been one of the best experiences of my life. And it's interesting being able to go and to be able to see and to be able to work through, these sorts of things. I want to go back in history. I love history, and I think history is one of the most interesting things to be able to talk about. But there was a president of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America, and he wrote on October 12th of 1881, President Edmondson offered advice. He says, "Brothers and sisters, the carpenters in convention assembled have formed a confederation under the title of Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America for the purpose of uniting all in an earnest effort to advance the interests of the trade, morally, socially, and pecuniarily. That our vocation should occupy no mean position socially is evident when we consider the skill required and the fact of earning a living by supplying the necessities of the community in which we live. In contrast with other classes who support themselves through the follies and vices of their fellow man, it behooves us to unite and through association use our best endeavors to elevate our trade above that of mere wage workers." For Millwright Local 548 and for a lot of the Carpenters locals, especially in the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters, there is an opportunity coming up. We have a wage negotiation coming up. And I'd like to think about President Edmondson's advice from 1881. I feel like this could be written today. And I want to read it again because if you know me, you know that I love repetition. That our vocation should occupy no mean position socially is evident when we consider the skill required and the fact of earning a living by supplying the necessities of the community in which we live. Recently was on a ski patrol strike, and I was on that picket line and I was able to speak with a number of different patrollers. These are patrollers that have a very difficult job, that are able to help their community in a very significant way. And we want to think about President Edmondson's advice that we should occupy no mean position socially, meaning that we are at a level of respect. The ski patrollers are at a level of respect. We want to think about being able to advance the interests of our trades, morally, socially, and pecuniarily. Pecuniarily means money. It means that our compensation should be commensurate with the level of impact that we make in the trade. I'm going to have a couple slides up here that are going to show some of the work that I do. I work a lot in nuclear power plants. We lift very heavy things. I'm a certified crane operator. I'm a certified master rigger. I'm a certified advanced rigger with a number of different certification bodies. I hold welding certifications. Constantly in class, about 5 to 6 weeks a year I'm in class. There's a continual development that we have, and our compensation needs to match that. When we look at other trades, when we look at what other people are doing, sometimes I have conversations with people and they tell me, "Oh, well, the person sweeping the floor shouldn't be getting paid $40 an hour." Personally, I disagree. I think sometimes that the person sweeping the floor, especially when we talk about a nuclear power plant, especially when we talk about new construction facilities, they need to have a 360-degree view about what's going on. And it's very helpful for that person to be well compensated because I want the best people working on that. Not long ago, I was at a facility, a transportation facility, in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we were replacing a number of lifts for being able to lift up the light rail trains there. And I have to tell you that the custodians at that facility were some of the best that I've ever been around. There's a couple of power plants where it's been at that same level, but that level of polish and that level of competency about what goes on, that understanding. And these are people that have been doing that job for 20 or 30 years. But there's an importance to the tasks that all of us complete. And there's a way that we can look with organized labor where we can be able to bring everybody up. And this presentation is a way that a group of friends of mine were very, very successful in being able to bring about change within their community. And so I want to share that. My next slide speaks about hourly wages and output per hour from 1970 to 2013. If we look at this slide, it's from Lawrence 2016 U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The gross output per hour has dramatically increased, whereas the production worker hourly wages, when ranked against the Consumer Price Index, has basically been stagnant. When we look at this chart, I want to think about what it is that divested in 1973, why it is that we have this discrepant behavior where your output's increased, you're doing more work than they did back then, but your pay hasn't increased, especially when indexed against the Consumer Price Index. So when we have conversations about labor, there's people that will come and they'll say, oh, well, they've gotten a 50% wage increase over this amount of time. I want to tell you that I don't think that that's meaningful, because when we look at it in historical context, when we look at how much time it takes to be able to buy a house, to pay off a house, it's years and years and years. And in the past, it was a relatively short period of time. When I move forward, my next slide is going to be from a lady named Deirdre Wells, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Park City Mountain Report. It is from an article that she had written for the Park Record dated January 6th of 2025. The article's up there. I'm going to link to it. You could be able to read the article of itself. But I want to read the last section which I've actually highlighted, which says that nobody wins in a strike. I want to disagree with this statement. No one wins in a strike. When we look at different labor actions that have happened over the last 2 to 3 years, there have been tremendous wins by the members of the community, by the members of the organized labor community that have had huge wins. We think about the importance, and we think about with Park City Resort that there's a number of different things that people are doing that should be well compensated. Park City is a beautiful ski area. They have really excellent facilities. People that are working there should be well compensated. It should be a good experience for the people working there, and it should be a good experience for the guests, for the leadership, for everybody within that. And one of the things that we sometimes have to do in organized labor is sometimes we have to strike. My next slide speaks about this. You right now have a right to strike. Section 7 of the National Labor Relations Act states in part, employees shall have the right to engage in other concerted activities for the purpose of collective bargaining or other mutual aid or protection. I'm going to jump forward a little bit. Specifically in 1962, the Supreme Court in NLRB versus Washington Aluminum upheld the NLRB's decision that workers in a non-unionized workplace who walked out because it was too cold were protected under the NLRA, and the employer could not fire them. There are limitations and qualifications for the exercise of that right. So if you're ever in a workplace, if you're in a non-union workplace and you're having challenges and you want to be able to fix that, call up the Carpenters Union. We have some great people, some great organizers that can be able to give you help. I know that the CWA, I know that there's a number of AFL-CIO, there's another different organizations that fall under different groups that would be able to effectively help you to be able to put together information to make a decision about if it's necessary to strike. Worker safety is something that's worthwhile to walk away from. Not long ago, there was a hurricane and there was a huge flood that came with that hurricane. And there were workers that stayed on that job out of a sense of duty and out of being job scared. And they ended up dying. And the thing was that the leadership, the management of that company ended up leaving, and those workers died on that job. Don't let that happen to you. Don't let that be the thing that holds you back. I'm in Colorado right now. I'm in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. It's a beautiful place. I love being here. But the thing is that I used to work for a crane company here that was based in Breckenridge, Colorado. And constantly my life would be placed in danger. Don't lose your life for a job that doesn't care about you and that isn't paying you well. Use this information about the National Labor Relations Act. Think about organizing and being a part of a labor union, because these are things that can really change the quality of your life and be able to change the quality of life for those around you. Just as background information, Vail Resorts, they say that the enterprise valuation of Vail Resorts is $10 billion. So that's with a B. It's a very, very large organization. They've been under for the last, 20 plus years, they've been acquiring different ski areas and then being able to build a large organization to try and be able to reduce their costs, to be able to provide a good guest experience, and to be able to help with that. For Park City Resort specifically, it's $328 a day for a lift pass. It's $125 to $1,350 a night for lodging. I imagine that there's places that are much more expensive than that, but that's what's listed on the website that I could be able to find. And it's $35 for a hamburger. Over the last 4 years, 2021 to 2024, Vail raised ski patroller wages from $13 an hour on average to $25 an hour. That's a 50% wage increase. And that's average wages. That's not necessarily starting wages. When they entered a wage negotiation about 10 months ago, the original management officer was a 4% pay increase to $1 an hour, which would be $1 an hour. They were at the bargaining table for 10 months and they hit an impasse. Now, that's background information. It's a very, very large corporation. This is an organization that has a history of having less than optimal outcomes for both guests and for workers there. There's a lot of people, if you spend time in a resort community, that have really negative things to say about Vail Resorts. And it's unfortunate because they have such great terrain. I recently was skiing at Keystone, and they do have some really great terrain, but sometimes that guest experience can leave a lot to desire. What does a ski patroller do exactly? Well, they evaluate and control hazards on the mountain. So there's avalanche mitigation. They often are using and handling high explosives. There's usually not hazard pay for this. It usually requires an ATF certification, and it's a very significant aspect of what they do, because you look at a mountain face and you learn it and you work on it over several years, and you're able to know where you need to be able to discharge the explosive to slough off that layer of snow that would be hazardous to the people going by. That's an important job. That's a job, if somebody's handling explosives, I want them to be very well compensated. They're also emergency response. Oftentimes they're first responders, so it's either a wilderness first responder or an EMT. They deal with emergency evacuation. So if you break your leg, if you're injured, they're the ones taking you off the mountain. They have toboggans, they have snow machines, they have different ways to be able to get you off. They even evacuate people from lifts. There have been times where the lift breaks and you need to be able to, they throw up a hook and they get you hooked up to a harness and they're able to bring you down. They deal with avalanche response. So many of them are trained canine handlers. I talked to a couple of canine handlers there, and they find and rescue casualties. Something to really think about is that the people doing this job are oftentimes dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. You're seeing things that nobody else is seeing. You're seeing broken bones. You're seeing people dead. You're seeing people on their worst day of their life. Oftentimes you're in a place that's kind of like paradise, but you're dealing with somebody that's having their worst day. So we want to think about that as something in our discussion is that these are people that are really working hard to be able to keep us safe, to be able to keep our world safe. What were the ski patrollers' demands? So they wanted a starting wage of $23 an hour. Originally it was at $21 an hour. They wanted overtime at 40 hours. I take a lot of this stuff for granted. I take good compensation for granted. I take overtime for granted. I get overtime after 8 hours. And after 12, it's double time. So we want to think about that, what their demands are in comparison to other people in organized labor are really, really, fundamental and basic. I don't think that the person that's handling high explosives or the person that's trying to take me off the mountain if I'm having a heart attack or a broken bone, or somebody that's helping to be able to find a lost kid is somebody that I want to just have them paid as like a starting salary. I want that to be somebody that's the best of the best. And especially at Park City, I want them to be somebody that's able to provide that elite experience because they're having that elite experience. They want equipment allowances. They want advanced training, elimination of arbitrary wage caps. And they want to be able to see some policy changes. There's a lot of my way or the highway attitude. And, I have to be honest with you. I see that in a number of different settings. And so it's not just ski patrol, but there is an opportunity for labor relations to improve with better management and better opportunities there. And, Vail estimated the cost to be a little bit less than $1 million per year to be able to do that. So that $1 million per year, we want to really emphasize because that's a very, very small percentage of the budget. When we look at a $328 a day lift ticket, when we look at $35 hamburgers, it's something where obviously being able to deliver a hamburger for 4 or 5 months a year in a very specific location in an Alpine does have increased costs, but there's a lot of profit that comes into that $35 hamburger. And so we want to really look at it as that the productivity that we've seen with workers increasing so much since 1973 is something that we want to be able to see more of our workers be able to share with. And a strike is a tool that people use sometimes to be able to accomplish that goal, and that our friends the ski patrollers use very effectively. And to pay the patrollers' demands would have only cost Vail under $1 million a year per their own estimate. The strike, it started over the Christmas holiday week. The impacts were dramatic and they were immediate. Ski patrollers know their routes. They know how to open the mountain. They know all of this information that's very specific about each mountain. They know how to be able to get you out of there quickly. If you've ever been in an emergency response situation or ever worked as a first responder, there's this concept of a golden hour. That if I can get you, if you're injured severely and I can get you to advanced medical care within 1 hour, your survival rate dramatically increases. That's the golden hour. These ski patrollers know that golden hour. They know how to get you out of there quickly. They know how to do it professionally. When you bring people in that don't know the mountain well, you end up with a lot of operational issues that can be disastrous. So over the Christmas holiday week, only 25 of 41 lifts and 104 of 350 trails were open. So a lot of that advanced terrain that requires explosives to be able to open up, that requires a higher level of expertise, that requires that knowledge, weren't open. Vail Resorts brought in scabs, so they brought in ski patrollers from other resorts, and they were paying $600 a day plus expenses for those people to be there. Now, I have to say, I think being a scab is one of the worst things you can do because you're hurting other people's organized labor. I'm sure that people were, wanting to be able to improve their image with Vail Resorts and wanting to be able to make it look better. But I promise you, if you're a scab, you end up on a list, and it's a really bad list to be on. It was an operational disaster in so many ways. I saw numerous videos that showed several hour-long lift lines. There were guests self-evacuating after an injury, so people with broken limbs, upper extremity injuries, getting themselves off the mountain themselves and not going to ski patrol and not being able to get that higher level of care. And there was no major avalanche mitigation open. They realistically probably just closed all the stuff that was at risk, but that's something to really think about. So 204 motivated ski patrollers, which Local 7781 had, not going to work for a little less than 2 weeks. The result, shares of Vail Resorts dropped 6% since the start of the strike, wiping out nearly $400 million in market value, meaning that the stock valuation of Vail Resorts, their stock, decreased $400 million because of 204 people going to work. We think about what that impact is, of how those people make such a significant impact on the success or failure of that company. There were severe injuries requiring medevac of guests at one of the other resorts at Vail Resorts. It's been theorized, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, but it's been theorized that injury, something that could have been preventable, had upper-level leadership that was scabbing at Park City, had been on site at that resort. There's class action lawsuits that have been filed. Visitors are spending $10,000 to $20,000 a week to go to this exclusive, really exceptional resort. I mean, those Park City resorts are really amazing. I go to Deer Valley. Sometimes I like Deer Valley when there's a lot of snow. It's not so much fun when there's not a lot of snow, but it's nice because a lot of the people there don't ski trees. And so that opens up a lot of it. And so I enjoy Park City quite a bit. But the thing is that there's people that, they traveled from all over the world to go to Park City. They wanted to be able to tell their friends, hey, I was at Park City. They wanted to take videos. They wanted to ski it. They wanted to be a part of it. And they had a terrible experience. And so there's class action lawsuits that have been filed. So just 204 people not going to work. When I think about a Millwright Local, and I think about the impact of what we have and what we do as a local, it's something to really think about when we go into a wage negotiation is what is the value of our work? What does work and what doesn't work if we don't go to work? Because these ski patrollers and millwrights, I think in a lot of ways are very similar. Next slide is just an example of one of the placards one of the signs that we were carrying. Just talked about being union strong. It was really fun being on the strike because there's a lot of good community engagement that occurs. There's a lot of people from all over that area that came to be able to join that strike, to be able to be a part of it and to be in the discussion of it. Next slide is of Park City Ski Patrol is on an unfair labor practice strike with NORB. I really recommend spending time to go to NORB.gov and to learn more about what the rules are specifically with strikes. It's not something that you can just do, but you want to be able to talk to people that are experienced, that are knowledgeable, and to be able to use that information to help you to be able to decide if a strike is appropriate. The community reaction was very strong. The mayor of Park City, Nan Worrell, specifically spoke out that there's significant livability challenges, and it's a workforce that all too often shoulders the weight of today's economic pressures. I remember working for a crane company in Breckenridge, Colorado, getting $16 an hour, getting billed out at $160 an hour. Okay, if you know anything about Breckenridge, Colorado, and Summit County, Colorado, the cost of living is insane there. Thinking about being able to have a professional workforce and the type of people that will stay for that type of job at that type of pay rate. Granted, my pay increased rapidly because I was able to get a number of certifications and get experience very quickly. But for these ski patrollers, what quality of life do you have making $21 an hour in Park City, Utah? How well can you live? How much stress are you under? But this mayor was able to speak directly. They had another weekend of confusion and disruption due to unresolved labor dispute. They called on Vail Resorts to take immediate action to conclude negotiations and end the uncertainty. They know that the impact of their community, they know that their community is only successful when their workers are successful. There's no benefit, there's no glory in being very wealthy and doing it on the backs of other people. I can tell you from personal experience of having had very wealthy people take advantage of having very wealthy people screw you over, that it doesn't create a positive impression. It doesn't create a positive situation. And so these workers, by taking the action and going on strike, were really able to change that. The mayor speaks more. Park City Mountain is a cornerstone of Park City's community well-being, and it is Vail Resorts' responsibility as an essential employer to resolve the conflict without further delay. As we stand by ready to assist in any way necessary to help bring this matter to a resolution, we humbly ask everyone for civility and respectful behavior towards each other during this challenging time. The mayor understands that the workers need to be able to have a living wage. They need to be able to have the potential to be able to grow their lives, to grow in excellence, to be able to grow in what their quality of life is. It's much better when you have workers that are excited to be working, that are interested in working, and that are interested in being successful. And frankly, at $328 a day for a lift ticket, it's insane that they're not getting paid. I went on the picket line on Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Frankly, I hurt my ribs a little bit. I had a pretty good fall out in Big Sky Resort, so it wasn't just a philanthropic thing. But I also needed to heal for a couple days. I'm really good on a picket line, so if you ever have a picket line and you need somebody to be able to go there, I'm really good at the waving. I'm really good at being able to be loud. It's probably not surprising, but it was a real joy, and it was honestly an honor to be on the picket line with these ski patrollers. We picketed at several locations. I have to say that 90%, and this is just me being out there, but 90%, we had a positive reaction. On a continual basis, I had people coming up to me. They were just saying, don't quit. People's in Porsches and these very exquisite, high-end luxury cars sitting there telling us, don't quit. That's a beautiful thing. That makes me proud that there's people in the community that see what's going on, that understand what the impact is of ski patrol, and they tell them, don't quit. Whenever you see a picket line, I want to just remind you, join, even if it's for half an hour. Go pick up the sign. Help people to be able to be on that picket line. Help them to be able to be successful. Please bring healthy food. I brought oranges and I brought a bunch of nuts and stuff like that. It's real easy to grab stuff like donuts or burritos, and those are great things. And I'm not saying don't bring it, but they really appreciated being able to have healthy food. And I think especially for ski patrollers, they're so active, it's hard for them to be able to just stand there. They want to be moving around. That's a job that's very, very active. And so being able to bring them good food, good nutritious food that can be able to help them to nourish, to flourish really makes a difference. Share meaningful support in person and online. Having conversations with friends of yours afterwards. That's what my purpose is of this presentation is. Obviously, I want us going into our wage negotiation, thinking about what a good wage is for members of the UBC. But I also want to think about, what it is that the lessons learned were from this labor action. What lessons did Vail Resorts learn? Of having people off work for less than 2 weeks, costing you $400 million. That's an enormous cost to bear as an organization, and that's something that I would imagine that the executives have very negative reactions to, because that's something that's directly linked to their compensation. So we want to think about it as somebody that works, that your voice has tremendous power. Your presence at work has tremendous power. That's for nurses, teachers, everybody in this world. Your presence has tremendous power. And we really need to think about what we can do to be able to communicate that effectively and to be able to help members of the community, whether that's in management, whether that's just people in the community, to understand that we need to be able to have living wages to be able to be successful. It's not about living in poverty. Well, these other people live in excess. It makes no sense. If it's cold, if you see a picket line, bring hand warmers and coffee. Those were things that I saw abroad that really made a difference to morale. And something to really add is never cross a picket line. If you're sitting there and your tools are inside of a job site and you're at a picket line and the job site's closed down, but you really need those tools because you're going to another job, talk to somebody on the picket line, find somebody in charge, give them your wallet, give them your cell phone, maybe both of those, and just say, look, I just need to get my tools. I'm not crossing the picket line to be able to scab on it, but literally I just need to get my tools. That's the type of thing that can be able to get your tools especially for millwrights. I mean, we're hauling so many tools. That's something that can make a difference. But man, if you're going to work and you're crossing a picket line, that's not acceptable. I mean, there are scenarios and there's places where I work where we sometimes might be called in to do that contractually. For work under the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, we have specific rules related to labor actions that are different than anywhere else in the industry because those projects are classified as a critical project, and there's ways in which that would be handled. But really, never cross a picket line. I don't see anything wrong with people going and skiing. If you already had the Epic Pass, going and skiing, but don't spend money there. Don't, if there's a picket line in the future for the ski patrollers or for, anybody within that organization, don't cross that picket line. You want to sit there and think about it as that there's a solidarity that we have. Most Americans aren't working for themselves. Most Americans are working for people. And thinking about how being able to strengthen the voice of the worker is something that's very significant. An unfair labor practices strike is defined as employees who strike to protest an unfair labor practice committed by their employer are called unfair labor practice strikers. If you go on the NLRB website, the National Labor Relations Board website, you can be able to see the specific labor actions that occurred, the specific negotiation attempts, and the complaints that were filed about this. So they have the paper trail. It's not something where you just declare it right away. There might be scenarios, I'm not an expert on that, but most of the time it's an ongoing negotiation that fails, and then eventually you actually go on strike. Such strikers can neither be discharged nor permanently placed. When the strike ends, unfair labor practice strikers, absent serious misconduct on their part, are entitled to have their jobs back even if employees hired to do their work have been discharged. So think about it as that you're able, under the rules that currently exist, you're able to go on strike and you're able to get your job back. It's something that's very powerful. It can be an uncomfortable practice. It can feel really uncomfortable, but when you go through it and you see what goes on and you see the community support swell up and be able to really hold you up as successful, it's something that's very, very powerful. I'm really grateful for those ski patrollers for going on strike. So in conclusion, 204 ski patrollers not going to work for less than 2 weeks cost $400 million in stock valuation. That means that the investors on Wall Street looked at what was going on with that labor action. They looked at how poorly the operations of that resort were going, and they reduced their valuation of Vail Resorts. This is a very significant impact. So 204 people not going to work cost $400 million. For every employer out there, you need to think about it. What employees do you have that if they don't go to work, you're not successful, that you can't do your operations? The patrollers' very reasonable demands were rejected for 10 months. In conversation with the patrollers, they mentioned that those demands were seen as just a simple thing. They thought it would just be sort of a perfunctory, like, hey, we know that inflation has increased. We know that there's different challenges. We want to be able to see it be successful. So it's something where, they went in expecting this to be a line item that would just be approved and they'd be able to move on. And in fact, it wasn't. It was something that ended up being very controversial. And they didn't have any other choice but to go to work. For Millwright Local 548, our impact is similar to the ski patrollers. There's times where the contractors are not paying per diem, where they're looking at different ways to be able to save money. And I get it, man. We all want to save money. Let's find ways to be more effective and more efficient, working together with labor and management so that we're more successful. But there's contractors sometimes that don't pay per diem. They're kind of jerking us around on that. I've been on jobs where we're not getting paid per diem, and it's very frustrating, especially when it's far from the house. Something I'd ask is our wage competitive with other trades? I think about iron workers, I think operating engineers, I think about fitters. Certainly there are areas where there are skill sets and there's knowledge that they have or there's licensure that they have that we don't have. But we want to be able to be competitive. For our contractors to be successful, we need to have the best workers. And to be able to make the millwrights specifically competitive with these other trades, we need to be able to come up a bit more on the wages. Again, this is my personal opinion. I don't speak for anybody except for myself. What is the economic impact of our work? What stops if we stop? Are there facilities where if millwrights don't come in and do the machinery work and don't do the precision measurement and do the alignments and all of this, what would stop if we stopped coming to work? When we think about our wage negotiation coming up, and I'm not calling for a strike, but I am calling for us to be able to speak openly and honestly about what the impact of our wages are on our quality of life. I think about myself. I have very low costs. I have no children. I have no dependents. I have no spouse. I kind of just live a very excellent life on a very basic wage. I'm able to be intelligent about my money. I'm able to be able to plan that out. I've got friends that have a bunch of kids, and I think about those friends of mine who have a bunch of kids that are out there working, that are grinding out 60 hours a week every single week to be able to do that. What if they only had to work 50 hours a week? What if they only had to work 40 hours a week and could be able to preserve that way of life? What would be the outcome for their children? What would be the results? What are the good things that they could be able to do? I'm open about the fact that I have a 501c3 organization. I have SOTA SODAC. Being able to live the way that I live and work the schedule that I work allows me to be able to go live a very high quality of life. It leads me the ability to be able to go and to do great things, to be able to help the community, to be able to maximize my quality of life, and to be able to really create a world that works for me. For each of us, for every worker, we want to think about ways we can do that. It makes me incredibly sad when I hear people talk about, holding up this idea of like a single parent working 3 or 4 jobs part-time to be able to make enough money to be able to raise their 3 kids. That to me is the worst that we can imagine as a society, is that you have somebody that really needs support, that is that sort of nest, that nexus where those children are in that environment where they need support, where they need to be successful, where they need to be able to have good opportunities, where they need to be able to have that parental nourishment to be able to be successful, and they're not getting it. And so the parents continually stressed. They're constantly having to worry about their schedule. They're constantly worried about this, worried about that. How can we be able to create a better outcome from those parents? How can we be able to create a better outcome? And I think, again, that at the very beginning, I talked about President Edmondson and on October 12th of 1881, that we really need to consider, and this is for all workers. This isn't just for millwrights. This isn't just for ski patrollers. That our vocation should occupy no mean position socially is evident when we consider the skill required and the fact of earning a living by supplying the necessities of the community in which we live. We supply the necessities of the community in which we live. The reality is that so many of the people that make so much money right now are very, very significantly separated from the actual labor that goes on. Their understanding can sometimes be very meager. There are some, and I have to tell you, there's one contractor that I constantly speak highly of. And you know what? The president of that contractor is a card-carrying millwright, has been a millwright, has been on the same jobs that I've been on. And is somebody that I really respect because they go and they support workers when there's different challenges. And that's something that I really love seeing. But there's times where it's these people that have no experience, no understanding, and they're making these decisions and they're telling us that no one wins in a strike. Just like that CEO of Park City Resort said, no one wins in a strike. I disagree. When we look on a continual basis, when we look at UAW, when we look at the dock workers strike, the outcomes were so significant because the impact that we make on the society is so significant. So I want to repeat what was said in 1881, that our vocation should occupy no mean position socially, is evident when we consider the skill required and the fact of earning a living by supplying the necessities of the community in which we live. Let's take stock of exactly what the impact is that we have on our communities. Let's take stock of exactly what it is that we do for a living. As members of the Carpenters Union, there's so many ways in which we help our community. I have my way in which I'm focused on helping the community, but there's other people that have completely different lives and lifestyles than I have. They do things that help to be able to build community. They have great networks of friends. They have great opportunities with what they do. Let's think about it in a positive way. And my hope is that in our wage negotiation, we're able to really successfly partner with our contractors and be able to come to a conclusion for wages that's very successful, that makes them more successful, that makes the workers more successful, and leads us all to more success in the future. But let's not forget the fact that these ski patrollers, they went on strike. 204 ski patrollers going on strike cost $400 million in stock valuation. Man, that's a scary thing. If you're an organization, you need to think about what the impact of your workers is. We need to think about the realities economically of, I don't think that people in their 30s and 40s should be living a bunch of people in a house unless they want to. When I lived in Breckenridge, Colorado, I was very lucky for a while with my living situation. But to be able to live on $16 in Breckenridge, Colorado, 7-8 years ago, would have just been this hand-to-mouth existence, just miserable. And I was building these multi-million-dollar homes. I was building all this different stuff. And this is one of the real challenges when we talk about organized labor, is that we need to think about what is the quality of the life of the people working. What is the quality of life making those decisions? Because there's deaths of desperation. We see suicide rates. We see people getting into drugs and alcohol. We see all of these negative outcomes. A lot of it's based on stress. And if we're able to effectively manage the stress by reducing the impact that people are experiencing in their communities, we're going to have better outcomes. So I ask that as you go through these wage negotiations, as you watch this presentation, I ask that you think about, exactly what is your impact? What is the impact of the workers? Today I'm in a hotel room. It's so nice being in a hotel. I love being in a hotel. But I had trouble with the internet. And I called the front desk and they were like, oh, well, just, turn it off, turn it back on. You know what? Less than 5 minutes later, they had somebody up here that was able to help get the computer figured out and get the whole thing set up so that I was successful with it. That person should be getting a good wage. They should be able to be somebody that's successful. They have the intelligence to be able to understand this, to work with me, to have that customer service, to be trusted. Man, that's somebody that's really valuable in my community. How can you be able to help others in your community be more valued and help them be more successful? So with that, I want to thank you very much for your attention. I hope that this presentation is inspirational for you. If you ever get a chance, check out Park City Ski Patrol. They've got lots of social media stuff. They do some really cool stuff. The avalanche dogs are so awesome. I love working dogs. I think they're one of the coolest things. Being able to see that partnership between the ski patrollers and the dogs to save lives is a beautiful thing. And thinking about how wonderful it is being in the mountains and being able to enjoy this nature and to be able to enjoy this world. So I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. I hope there's a lot of value from it. And I hope that we all get better working conditions. I hope that our companies are more successful and we're able to have a better, just and fair society. Have a great day.